The camera opens with rapid flashes of crowds in the streets of Tehran. Black and white footage of CIA briefings, and the silhouette of a drone falling from the sky. A deep, tense soundtrack builds as the narrator speaks. For decades, Iran and the United States have circled each other like two giants locked in a silent battle. But despite America's global reach, there were moments unexpected, dramatic, and irreversible when Iran delivered shocks that Washington never saw coming. Shocks that toppled assumptions, humiliated leaders, and reshaped the balance of power in the Middle East. Footage jumps from the burning U.S. Embassy gates in 1979 to American soldiers in Baghdad, then to the wreckage of the RQ-4 Global Hawk drone. The narrator continues. These weren't just surprises, they were geopolitical earthquakes. The title card hits the screen. The intro begins calmly, pulling viewers into the story behind the rivalry. To understand how Iran stunned the United States 4 times in modern history, you have to understand the roots of this tense relationship. For decades, the U.S. viewed Iran as a key pillar in the Middle East and ally, a stabilizing force, a gateway to regional power. But beneath the surface, pressure was building. Political repression, foreign interference, and rising anger among ordinary Iranians. The visuals show the Shah shaking hands with American presidents, contrasted with secret CIA documents and footage of protests swelling in 1978. And then, the narrator says, everything began to unravel. The intro expands the stakes, reminding the audience how deeply both nations shaped each other's paths. What followed was a chain reaction of revolutions, hostage, crises, proxy battles, and military confrontations. Each one challenged U.S. expectations. Each one forced Washington to rethink its strategies. And each one proved that Iran, despite isolation and immense pressure, could still change the course of history. The music rises as the narrator delivers the final tease. Today, we're breaking down the 4 moments that shook America, moments that no one in Washington predicted, but no one in the world could ignore. The story of the first great shock begins long before the streets of Tehran erupted in flames. For decades, the United States believed Iran was one of its closest and most stable allies in the Middle East. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, seemed unshakable. American presidents praised him as a modernizing force, a visionary leader guiding Iran into a new era of prosperity, technology, and political alignment with the West. But what Washington couldn't see, what it never bothered to look for, was the rising wave of dissatisfaction buried beneath the surface. Ordinary Iranians resented foreign influence. Religious leaders opposed Western cultural expansion. Students were angered by inequality, repression, and the brutal tactics of the Shah's secret police, Savak. And slowly, the cracks in the monarchy grew wider, unnoticed by the intelligence reports that confidently predicted Iran's complete stability. Then, in 1978, the flames burst through. Protests swept across the country, massive, unstoppable, and multiplying in every city. Millions of Iranians marched through the streets demanding the end of the monarchy. The U.S. watched with disbelief. How could a nation so tightly aligned with Washington be unraveling so quickly? The Shah fled the country in early 1979, leaving behind a power vacuum that the world's intelligence agencies failed to foresee. And into that vacuum stepped a man who would redefine Iran forever, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. His return from exile electrified the nation. Within weeks, Iran transformed from a Western-backed monarchy into an Islamic republic, one fiercely opposed to American influence. The shockwaves in Washington were immediate and profound. Overnight, one of America's strongest Middle Eastern allies had vanished, replaced by a government that viewed the U.S. as an enemy. Diplomats, analysts, and military planners scrambled to understand what went wrong. How did the intelligence community miss the warning signs? How could one of the region's best-equipped armies collapse to street protests? The revolution was not just a political shift, it was a strategic earthquake. It shattered decades of U.S. policy in the Middle East and forced American leaders to confront a new reality. Iran was no longer a partner. It was now an ideological challenger, determined to resist American influence at every turn. And for Washington, This was the beginning of a nightmare that would only get worse. The revolution was the first moment. Iran shocked America, but not the last. The next shock was even more personal, more humiliating, and far more dramatic. Barely months after the revolution, tensions reached a breaking point. The new Iranian government was suspicious, divided, and intensely hostile toward the United States. Many Iranians feared that Washington would attempt to restore the Shah to power, just as it had helped overthrow Iran's democratically elected prime minister in 1953. That fear turned to fury when the Shah was admitted into the U.S. for medical treatment. Across Iran, people believed it was the beginning of another American-backed coup. And then, on November 4th, 1979, history took a dramatic turn. A group of Iranian university students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. They overwhelmed the security guards and captured dozens of American diplomats. The takeover was meant to be symbolic, perhaps temporary, but once it began, it spiraled into something much larger. Within hours, crowds outside the embassy cheered the students, and the new revolutionary government realized the political power of the moment. What started as a protest became a national confrontation. 52 Americans were taken hostage, blindfolded, tied, paraded before cameras, and held captive for what would become an astonishing 444 days. The shock in the United States was immediate. American pride, global influence, and diplomatic power collapsed in an instant. Images of blindfolded hostages spread across the world. Night after night, Americans watched the crisis unfold on television, unable to do anything but hope. The Carter administration struggled to negotiate, but every attempt failed. Iran refused to release the hostages, insisting that the U.S. first admit to its past interference in Iran's internal affairs. To Washington, this was humiliating. To Tehran, it was leverage and revenge. Desperate to end the crisis, the U.S. launched Operation Eagle Claw in April 1980, daring military mission to rescue the hostages. It ended in disaster. A sandstorm and mechanical failures crippled the operation, and 2 helicopters crashed, killing 8 American servicemen. The world watched as burning aircraft lay scattered across the Iranian desert. For the Iranians, it was proof that the new Islamic Republic could defy a superpower. For the Americans, it was a national embarrassment. Day after day, the crisis dragged on, crippling President Carter's administration and damaging the image of the United States worldwide. Finally, after months of negotiations and political maneuvering, the hostages were released on January 20th, 1981, the exact moment Ronald Reagan took the oath of office. The timing was no coincidence. It was Iran's final message. They controlled the pace of this confrontation, not America. The hostage crisis was a defining moment, a deep wound in the American psyche, and a powerful demonstration that Iran was willing to challenge the U.S. directly. Though often imagined as a giant barrier designed to keep invaders out, the Great Wall was far more than a simple obstruction. It functioned as an intelligent, multi-layered defense system, a complex network of fortresses, watchtowers, garrisons, and communication structures stretching across thousands of kilometers. Its purpose was not to stop enemies entirely, but to slow, deter, and control their movements, giving Chinese armies crucial time to mobilize and respond. One of the wall's most remarkable features was its beacon tower system. Watchtowers were placed at strategic intervals on elevated terrain, allowing soldiers to send signals across vast distances. When threats appeared, messenger smoke signals were released during the day, created by burning wolf dung, which produced dense black smoke, and, at night, beacon fires lit up the sky. These alerts could pass from tower to tower with astonishing speed, relaying warnings across hundreds of kilometers in just a few hours. Alongside these towers stood major passes, fortified gateways, acting as checkpoints for trade, migration, and military entry. Some of the most famous, such as Jiuzhuin and Shanhaiguan, were engineering marvels with massive gates, defensive traps, and multi-layered walls. Soldiers stationed at these passes lived in fortified cities, ready to respond to attacks or patrol nearby terrain. The wall's battlements featured arrow slits, platforms for soldiers to stand on, and storage rooms for weapons and supplies. However, the wall itself couldn't stop determined invasions, particularly from powerful nomadic confederations like the Xiongnu or later the Mongols. Instead, its true strength was control. It regulated movement, protected important trade routes like sections of the Silk Road, and allowed the empire to channel invaders toward fortified areas where resistance was strongest. Ultimately, the wall wasn't just built to block enemy Zet, was a sophisticated defense network designed to buy time, maintain order, and protect the heartland from sudden chaos. The Great Wall of China has long been wrapped in myth. Among the most famous claims is that it's the only man-made structure visible from space. While dramatic, this statement simply isn't true. Astronauts have confirmed that the wall is extremely difficult to identify from orbit with the naked eye, especially because it blends into the natural terrain and is often no wider than a modern road. The myth, however, reflects the extraordinary impression the wall has made on people around the world, so enormous that many assumed it must be visible from another world entirely. Another common misconception concerns the wall's continuity. Many imagine a single unbroken line slicing across China. But in reality, the wall is a series of walls, trenches, barriers, and fortifications built across different centuries. Some sections overlap, others run parallel, and many break off into remote landscapes. The total length, estimated at over 21,000 kilometers, includes these various layers, unfinished extensions, and defensive branches constructed by multiple dynasties. Much of the wall has also vanished over time. Harsh weather, erosion, and centuries of neglect have worn down enormous stretches. In deserts, sandstorms swallowed entire sections. In rural areas, villagers repurposed bricks for local construction. In forests, vegetation slowly reclaimed crumbling remains. What tourists visit today? Beautiful stone steps, scenic vista. Well-preserved battlements represents only a small portion of the wall's original scope. Even the wall's purpose has often been misunderstood. It was never an impenetrable shield. Instead, it served more as a psychological deterrent, a demonstration of imperial strength, and a tool for managing borders and trade. By separating nomadic and agricultural worlds, the wall played a massive role in shaping cultural interactions. Behind the myths lies a far more fascinating reality. The Great Wall isn't just a structure, but a constantly evolving story shaped by geography, politics, and human ingenuity. The Great Wall we know best today, the grand iconic stone and brick masterpiece, was largely shaped by the Ming Dynasty. After the fall of the Mongol-led Yuan Dynasty in 1368, the Ming rulers were determined never to be conquered by northern nomads again. This fear, combined with rising threats from Mongol tribes attempting to regain influence, pushed the Ming to embark on the most ambitious reconstruction of the wall in history. Unlike earlier dynasties, the Ming possessed advanced knowledge of military architecture and access to stronger building materials. They introduced a revolutionary shift from mud and rammed earth to stone foundations and brick exteriors, creating a structure far more durable and imposing. Brick allowed for greater precision. Walls could be built higher, smoother, and more uniform. Workers reinforced the base with large stone blocks to prevent erosion and collapse, especially on steep mountain ridges. The Ming also expanded the wall's defensive system. They constructed thousands of watchtowers, spaced strategically for communication, storage, and lookout. These towers weren't just simple platforms. They contained rooms for soldiers, fireplaces for beacon signals, and openings for archers. Fortresses and garrisons were placed at key locations, forming self-sustaining military hubs capable of housing entire regiments. Some of the wall's most well-known sections, such as Battling, Mutianyu, and Jinxianling, date from this era. Their wide walkways, crenellated parapets, and stunning mountainous routes reflect both engineering mastery and aesthetic brilliance. The wall became not only a barrier, but a statement of Ming power, stretching across dramatic landscapes as a symbol of vigilance and determination. Yet the Ming Wall also revealed the pressures of the time. The dynasty poured immense resources into construction and maintenance, often straining the treasury. Despite all efforts, the wall could not prevent internal decline or political corruption. Eventually, in 1644, the Ming fell, ironically not due to an external invasion breaching the wall, but internal rebellion, and a gate opened from within. While the wall itself is extraordinary, the stories of the people who lived upon it are just as compelling. Soldiers stationed along the Great Wall endured some of the harshest conditions imaginable. Many were young men from farming families who found themselves suddenly relocated to lonely frontier posts, where winters were brutal and summers scorching. Their primary duty was vigilance, constantly watching for movement along the steppe, interpreting signals from distant towers, and patrolling rugged paths. Daily life was demanding. Soldiers lived in cramped barracks or within watchtowers, often sleeping in shifts to ensure that someone was always on guard. Food supplies were limited. Harsh terrain made farming difficult, so provisions had to be transported from distant towns. Meals often consisted of millet, dried vegetables, salted meat, and hard bread. In remote areas, soldiers relied on hunting and foraging to supplement their rations. Despite the difficulty, communities slowly formed along the wall. Wives and families sometimes followed soldiers, creating small settlements near garrisons. Markets sprang up, where merchants sold tools, medicine, and basic goods to the isolated frontier communities. Festivals, storytelling, music, and games helped lift spirits during long, uneventful stretches when no invasions threatened. Training was relentless. Soldiers practiced archery, swordsmanship, and signaling techniques. They learned to operate the beacon towers, using specific smoke patterns to communicate enemy positions and troop numbers. Maintaining the wall was part of their duty to repairing steps, cleaning battlements, and reinforcing defensive features. Yet danger was constant. Raids could come swiftly, and soldiers needed to react instantly. Many spent years stationed far from home, uncertain if they would ever return. Their contributions, often overshadowed by the wall itself, were vital. They were the living heartbeat of China's northern defense, ordinary people standing guard over a vast empire. In the modern era, the Great Wall stands as both a proud national symbol and a fragile historical treasure. Declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987, it attracts millions of visitors each year, who hike its restored sections and photograph its sweeping panoramas. Yet the admiration comes with challenges. Tourism brings wear, litter, and pressure on heavily trafficked areas, prompting preservation efforts to balance access with protection. Many sections of the wall, especially in remote provinces, remain untouched and deteriorating. Harsh natural forces, from rain and frost to sandstorms, continue to erode ancient bricks and packed earth cores. Some stretches have collapsed entirely, swallowed by dust or reclaimed by forests. Preservationists face difficult decisions. Should every part be restored, or should some be left in their natural, crumbling state as authentic artifacts of history? China has undertaken numerous restoration projects, focusing on iconic sections near Beijing while mapping and documenting Lazernon's. Drone surveys, archaeological studies, and digital 3D reconstructions help experts understand the wall's massive scope and fragile condition. Local governments have also created laws to prevent unauthorized construction or vandalism near the wall, emphasizing its cultural importance. Beyond tourism and preservation, the wall has become a global cultural icon. It represents endurance, ambition, and the centuries-long struggle to shape and protect a civilization. In schools, textbooks showcase it as a symbol of ancient ingenuity. In modern media, it appears in films, documentaries, and outdoor challenges. Athletes run marathons on its steep paths, and artists draw inspiration from its winding silhouette. The wall's story, however, is still being written. As China modernizes, the challenge becomes maintaining the balance between heritage and progress. The Great Wall stands not just as a relic of the past, but as a powerful reminder of humanity's capacity to build, adapt, and dream across generations. As the camera drifts over the Great Wall one last time, the stones beneath seem to breathe with the weight of centuries. The narrator's voice softens, inviting viewers to reflect on everything they've just witnessed. This immense structure wasn't the creation of a single moment, nor the work of one emperor or dynasty. It was shaped by generations of hands, dreams, and sacrifices. Every brick holds a story. Every watchtower whispers the memory of soldiers who stood against icy winds and scorching summers, guarding the frontier with unwavering resolve. And every curve of the wall mirrors the challenges and triumphs of an entire civilization learning, over time, how to endure. The closing scene moves from rugged mountainous paths to silent, overgrown ruins deep in the countryside, reminding the viewer that history is not always preserved in perfect form. Some parts of the wall stand tall, proudly restored. Others crumble quietly, hidden from tourists and cameras, yet no less sacred. Together, they form a tapestry of resilience and ancient reminder that even the greatest creations face erosion, change, and rebirth. The narrator reflects on how the wall's purpose transformed from defense to symbol. What once divided worlds now unites them, drawing people from across the globe to walk its ancient stones and feel the echo of past civilizations. It stands not merely as a monument of stone, but as a testament to human determination, imagination, and the unbreakable spirit to safeguard what matters. And as the final sunlight fades behind the mountains, the voice offers a last thought. When you stand on the Great Wall, you're not just looking at history, you're standing inside it. You're standing where emperors planned, where warriors watched the horizon, where countless unknown individuals left their mark. The wall endures, not because it is made of stone, but because it is made of stories.
If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next deep dive adventure. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments.